SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
The North Mississippi Hummingbird Festival happens in South Haven on September 12 and 13 to celebrate the huge fall migration with very birdie fun for the whole family. Learn more at northmshummingbird.org or your local Wild Birds Unlimited.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Midday Super Talk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Rhino.
Howdy. Friday, y'all.
Yeah, man, forgot that. It just went by so fast, I forgot it. It is a Friday, y'all. Welcome, everyone. It's still a bit warm out there, but, man, it was humid last night. But seems like the humidity is down a bit. It's teasing us, but the Weather Service says the outlook for the fall is continued hot here in the southern part of the United States. So, but that's fine. We can live with that. So far,
if you look at the extended outlook, where you can get a month or two out, it looks like there's a chance for an entire week with highs starting with an 8. The second week, the first full week of September.
Okay.
For about 4/5 of the Magnolia State.
We can live with that.
I believe the Gulf Coast has to wait another week. But,
I got you. Still in the 90s then, right?
Yeah. I think they still hit up in 91.
Are you watching this Lindsay Clancy murder trial? Are you watching that?
Unfortunately, I can't avoid it, it seems. I'm not actively watching or participating in the online conversation, but it seems like everywhere I look, and about half the people I talk to, it's all they want to talk about.
It's O.J. Simpson due, right? It's what it feels like. What was the other one? The lady that ended up drowning, it was determined. She was convicted, wasn't she? Drowned her kids. Remember that one? That was 10, 12 years ago. It's all the names kind of escape me and the case itself. But that's kind of what it reminds me of, except
Andrea Yates.
Is that okay? Seems right.
Yeah, that was the postpartum case where she drowned her 5 kids in the bathtub.
Okay.
June 2001.
Yeah, oh, man, it's a long time ago. Wasn't there another case where a mother drowned their kids in a pool, maybe? I could be wrong. All that stuff's starting to run together in my head. But I remember...
Or was it the lady that put them in the car and ran the car off in the...
I remember that. That was like Susan Smith or something. I can still see that with the little glasses. She looked kind of like a young granny, but she was just evil. She was devious. And remember, her husband testified and of course got emotional as part of as you can expect. But the thing about this one, what is wrong with our society when there are people who are defending this? What is up with that? And it's mainly females. Oh, we understand the trials and tribulation of being a mother, so we can understand how they would decide just to take their kids' lives. And we have to be sympathetic. What? What's going on here, man? This blew me away. Is there
sadly, it's nothing all that new. I mean, in recent news, you've had the Luigi Mangione groupies.
Yeah, I'm saying it's part of the trend.
And, I mean, if you go back to previous generations, you had Manson and all his acolytes.
That's true. I guess maybe it's because of the 24-hour news cycle, the myriad of...
But that wasn't the case in Manson's situation.
No, it wasn't, and there's no doubt that gripped the nation, right? He had kind of put all those people in a trance, so to speak. And then there was
even people that weren't in his little enclave of craziness. He had followers that came to the trial.
That's true. Maybe this is different to me, Rhino, because it's kids. And it's one's flesh and blood kids. Manson was just a nutcase that was trying to take over the minds and the bodies of acolytes, right? For personal gain, in my view. He was about the attention.
Some people argue that Manson was, I guess I could say this on the air, a bastardization of the American obsession with the outlaw, the renegade, the upstart, the ne'er-do-well.
Yeah.
Because you look at historically, America has had obsessions with those that find themselves afoul of the law.
True.
If that were the angle that was being taken in the Clancy case, it would still be deranged and odd, but it would be more understandable. What's not understandable is how seemingly well-adjusted people, seemingly predominantly women, are empathizing with a monster.
Yeah. She strangled 3 kids. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if the sequence of the strangling has been revealed. Does that mean while you're strangling one, the other 2 are observing? Is that what happened?
I haven't got into that granular detail on it. I know that at least one of the kids ran away and was in another room where the strangling occurred.
Oh, my gosh.
Because apparently the room he ran into was the dad's home office, hoping that Dad would be there to help.
Oh, man. So, I guess the lawyers have rested, right? We're awaiting a verdict now. I think the trial, the proceedings, the testimony, examination is over.
I heard something during the changeover and transition about, I think maybe the jury was requesting to look at the knife or something. But yeah, I think it's up to the jury at this point.
But there are women, to your point, who are empathizing around the country. They're outraged on her behalf, not at the fact that she killed 3 toddlers.
To the point that they are spending their cycles on social media creating content and cultivating conversations about how evil the father is.
Right. That's exactly right. I'm looking at. Yeah. Postpartum struggles. They're mad at her former husband. And some are even expressing disappointment that there's even a trial. Like, we shouldn't have a trial for someone who killed 3 minors that happened to be her own. 3 babies, yeah. That's ridiculous. I just don't even get it. 5, 3, and 8-month-old. It's just unbelievable. That's the worst form of evil there could possibly be. And they're empathizing with it. Just like you said, we talked about it on the show, the nutcases that are out supporting Luigi Mangione, who gunned down the United Healthcare CEO in cold blood. They denied my claim. You got to die. I mean, that's where we are in society. Unbelievable. And I don't think, I don't know what might be driving these nuts that, again, seem to be empathizing and sympathizing, supporting her. But I will say that the rhetoric against just big, bad, evil, greedy corporations in general, I think was at play with respect to Luigi Mangione and his deciding to take it upon himself to just go gun down the CEO. Man, you know, we have talked before on this program, I certainly have, about the super high compensation of professional athletes, which, by the way, I'm fine with. I don't begrudge it whatsoever. Tennis players. This came across in Forbes yesterday. The amount of pay being showered upon these professional tennis players. So one in particular at the top of the list, 23-year-old Alexander Zverev. He is, let's see, you got Carlos Alcaraz also included in that at the same level. But this guy, Carlos Alcaraz, 23, made $38 million in the last 12 months. There's not a CEO in America that has a compensation pay, just their pay, that's that high. Now, their compensation package, there's some that do. 23, $38 million for playing tennis. Why don't we ever go off on those guys and express contempt for them? Unbelievable. There's another, a 25-year-old Italian that made $58 million in total pre-tax income going back to 2025. Incredible. We are taking a break, coming right back.
At Fillmore Buick G.
Bring it on!
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on!
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
When I get to the bottom, I go back to the top of the side. When I stop and I turn and I go for a ride. Till I get to the bottom, I see you again. Yeah, yeah, yeah. To you, don't you want me to love you?
Yeah, on the C Spire text line, appreciate this. Casey Anthony, that's right. I remember now. So the charges were for first-degree murder for Casey Anthony, arguing that she killed Kaylee, her child, to free herself from being a parent, essentially. And the defense said she accidentally drowned, Kaylee did, in the family swimming pool, and the grandfather covered it up. But I'd kind of forgotten about the verdict. They found her not guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated manslaughter, and child abuse. She was convicted of 4 misdemeanor counts of lying to law enforcement. And this was in July 2008, I believe. It's when the 2011 was the trial. The incident occurred in 2008. So, little different situation. And I don't know that we'll ever know, did she intentionally drown her child or not, but that's the verdict. This is pretty
she doesn't seem to have much public-facing remorse, put it that way.
Agree. And just looking at Clancy in the courtroom, you know, the little bit of video and still photos, doesn't it look the same with her? She doesn't seem to be too bothered by the fact that she strangled 3 young children, 5, 3, and 8 months. I'm just blown away by that. But like I said, what's more shocking are the people that are siding with her and feel like even the trial shouldn't. She should just be excused. So what are you going to do that in society now, Rhino? We're just going to say, well, if you just got postpartum and you're just tired of being a mother, it's okay if you murder your children. Is that what we're saying?
That's what some of them are saying, yeah.
That's incredible. It's no different than Goofy Mangione. You're unhappy with a company with whom you do business. We're going to justify you assassinating an executive with the company. That's where we are. Incredible. I call that moral decay. That's being nice about it, honestly. Certainly, these are not people who have been enlightened by God and the principles of Christianity, and fundamental underscoring that is respect for human life and loving one another. What happened to that? Pretty simple principle. It's a pretty good guide for life. Man.
It's almost as if the legions of those that will lecture you on loving one another and being inclusive are simply using it to paper over and hide their inner monster.
Totally. And on the C Spire text line, you and I have talked about this, and I think we agree. We have a generation now that does not want to take personal responsibility. They have to lay blame on anything but themselves for their actions. So there's some folks that may get upset with what I'm about to say. I'm going to say it, though. The Democrats and all the DEI crap and the woke movement, Rhino, they're driving that attitude. We've talked about it. When they're saying that, oh, no, rugged individualism, that's racist, where delayed gratification is racist, meaning, sorry, to earn something of value, you might have to work a little while. You're not blessed with the God-given athletic talent these tennis stars are, and they're multi-gazillionaires at 23. I'm sorry. God didn't give you those cards. Take it up with him. Good luck. But you do have some talents and skills. Get off your ass and go do something with it. Quit blaming everybody else. We share the story. I talk about this whenever I travel around speaking. I'll never forget this. And when I started doing this on more of a part-time basis in 2020. What a great time to start, right, Rhino? Right after the George Floyd incident, and then the whole world got turned upside down. We were in the midst of COVID. But the first story I remember with respect to corporations just leaning so heavily into this DEI scam and all of the shakedown DEI consultants that were just scams was Sandia Labs, the people that manufacture this country's nuclear weapons. And they required their management to go off-site for a series of workshops and trainings. And they'd hired these scam artists, shakedown DEI scamming consultants, paid them a fortune. You know they did. And they stood in front of their management team and said, rugged individualism, striving for success, a can-do attitude. Those are all elements of white European supremacy. Well, when you're telling people that, you're basically saying you're not responsible for anything. And you're justifying crime and reparations and all this other garbage. Well, of course people think that. So our person on the text line here is absolutely correct. But all I'm saying is it doesn't help when those that are in the limelight, such as political figures and cultural figures, are out promoting that garbage. No.
And it's exacerbated when that side of the political aisle gains social capital by applying more and more layers of victimhood to themselves.
Boy, is that not the case. Look at poor, pitiful me, right? That's 100% right.
So you wind up with a bunch of empty notions and asinine ideologies layered on top of one another to the point that none of these people sincerely believe a large chunk of what they regurgitate. They simply have to regurgitate it in order to maintain their position in their in crowd. I mean, if you want any other better example of how these people really don't give a rat's rear end about what they're preaching, look at this trial we've been talking about. The lady killed her kids and then tried to jump out the window to have a reset. You had hundreds of women dressing up in pink and showing up to support her every day of the trial, except the day it rained.
Oh, my gosh. I didn't
You look
know
at the
that.
video of them driving her up in the van for the court on the day it rained. There's not a single lady in pink out there. So they really care about this, except when it's a minor inconvenience like some drizzle.
That's right. Look at me, except when it rains, right?
If you want another example, remember Jordan Peterson was having all the little leftist kids on his college campus all hacked off and protesting every time he tried to give a speech? What did he do? He started giving the lectures at 7 a.m.
That's right.
All of a sudden, all of these things that they were so worked up about that they were going to get violent with him wasn't important enough to get up at 7.
That's exactly right. I got to have my sleep. It's not that important. Oh, gosh. This is disturbing to me. I mean, it was disturbing, again, just thinking about someone assassinating a business executive in cold blood in broad daylight, and then this legions of people supporting him. And even in surveys, when they were asked, do we think it'd be okay to assassinate somebody if, they're doing something that is inconveniencing you, as you say? Yeah, that'd be okay. Yeah, it's just justified. What? That's where we are? That's the regard we have for human life? And as somebody on the C Spire text line points out, as horrible as this is, you have to understand this is the same women who believe that we should be able to abort and kill our babies before they're even born. Well, right on, I shared the report a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, up in Massachusetts, where they essentially eliminated the gestation period limitation on abortions, and the governor's signing that into law, surrounded by all these women who are just giddy about it. How could you celebrate that? You're sick. And she's holding it up, smiling, right? Just celebrating. And they're all behind her, fawning all over her and clapping and ear-to-ear smiles. They're like euphoric because they can go kill babies. I don't get it.
It's because they've been brainwashed for generation after generation that things are really empowering when they're degrading.
That's exactly right.
They've turned it all on its head. Everything that was at one point considered degrading is now empowering.
That's exactly. And that's, to some extent, what these women, I think, who are coming out in support of Clancy, I think that's what drives them. They feel
killing
like
your unborn child just a few generations ago would be something that would be considered degrading on one's soul.
Yeah.
Now it's celebrated as empowering.
It's praised. It's celebrated. That's exactly right. We revere it. Sick. Man, we're taking a break. Today, of course, we got Caleb Saylors, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News at 11:20. Senator Jeremy England, he's coming on at 12:05 to get his update on the SHIELD Act, whether or not that thing's going to be able to stand. Coming right back.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. How about this? A member of the United States military is expected to face criminal charges after winning more than $1 million betting on Polymarket ahead of American actions against Iran and Venezuela. Of course, no surprise, I guess, that you could bet on that, right, on Polymarket. What can't you bet on? Man, this was first reported by the Wall Street Journal, confirmed to the New York Post. This is from a source familiar with the investigation. This person's identity, who is now a millionaire, is unclear, as do the particular operations on which...
It's like the third or fourth federal employee to get popped for
exactly
betting on the prediction markets.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
interesting.
Was last month that Trump's teleprompter operator got in some hot water because he was making bets on the contents of the Trump speech?
Yep. That's right.
And then you had the Special Forces guy that was making bets the night before the Maduro raid.
Oh, man. What are you going to do? So I think the takeaway from here, to me, is that...
Have your wife placed a bet?
Yeah, well, there's always risk. That's certainly advisable to those who wish to bet on such matters that would be illegal or a conflict of interest if they did it personally. However, I can tell you that, like, with respect to our lottery law in Mississippi, those of us on the board can't play, nor can any, this is what the law says, nor can any direct family member who lives in your household. So if I had to
find an uncle,
that's
or
right,
a niece, or...
immediate family members can't. But right, an uncle or niece, if they lived in my household, that'd be fine. My child or my wife can't play. Now my children are adults and they live in their own household. They're free to play. But so you got to be careful with all that, right? It's not a bad rule, honestly, to avoid conflict of interest.
No.
And I'm fine with that. I think I told you before, I always got nervous whenever I'd find out my kids, when the Powerball and Mega Millions would get up there, my 30-something-year-old kids, and they'd go buy a ticket. You know, everybody just buys a ticket just on the case. You can't win unless you play. And I think, oh, crap, if they win, all hell's going to break loose on me. They're going to think I planted it or had something to do with it. And then I think, you know, if they win $1 billion, I'd be okay with that. I could live with that. Oh, man. But I was just thinking about how, you know, this technology comes with certainly a price in that we figure out ways to do things that are not in the best interest of society using that. So it's just like I've said it with nuclear power is the kind of the best analogy I think I can make. They're obviously beneficial applications and use cases of nuclear energy, and there are malicious, nefarious, negative uses. Well, and I think you and I have talked about with the advent of 3D printing, for example. You can do it now, right? You could fabricate a firearm. So with a 3D printer, if you had access to it. So all the various gun controls and restrictions are kind of worthless when you can just make your own. Well, now
I'm trying to think of a different word than visible, because it's like this is the exact opposite of the invisible hand. So would it be like the visible foot?
Visible foot. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Conspicuous foot.
Yeah, I like that. Obvious, glaring, something like that. Well, now, no surprise, illicit substances are now easier to produce than ever. So, okay, it's illegal to trade certain drugs, make those drugs, buy, sell them, use them, and so forth. No worries, just make your own. Now, I know we've had meth labs kind of doing that sort of for a while, but this is way beyond that. And so now that's becoming a concern, because it's cheap and it's easy and it doesn't really require a lot to just whip something up.
Well, also the laboratory equipment required.
Right.
At one point in time, if you just had a random storage unit that you were getting it shipped to from a reputable dealer, they might have some questions. Whereas nowadays, you just log on to whatever the newest Chinese app is, and you can have it shipped right to your door. No questions asked.
Well, the concern specifically that I'm seeing in some reports, I kind of did little work on that, synthetic, right? The synthetic drugs. Easy, cheap, anybody could do it. And it goes back to a statement I made multiple times. This war on drugs, total failure. If people want to put that crap in their body, they're going to figure out a way to get it. Somebody's going to sell it to them. In this case, the ingredients they're selling to them, right? They're buying the ingredients to whip it up and create these synthetic drugs. And though it is true that the number of overdoses is actually down. But I'm not sure that's because of the laws we have in place. You know what I'm saying? I don't know that that's driving the decline in overdoses. I'd like to think that it's because people are using less, but it's probably more, Rhino, because they're maybe using, and this may be an inappropriate word, more responsibly and from the perspective that, well, you're using enough to screw your head up, but not enough to kill you.
That's a much more humane angle on it, because the way I was thinking was there was such a marked increase in overdose deaths for a prolonged period of time. It's kind of like we were talking about the replacement rate with the birth rate.
Yeah.
It very well could have been more users were overdosing and dying than new users were introducing themselves.
That could be. Yeah, you're a good point. But I guess something I didn't think about, and I know you come from that world, that what we're talking about here are making drugs that alter your mind, your state of mind, et cetera, give you that high, that aren't plant-based. This is synthetic. And this is becoming easy and cheap.
And one of the other factors is the freedom of information, because a lot of the synthetic hallucinogenics, they were created in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but they were only ever written down in lab notes for a handful of scientists spread out geographically.
Yeah.
Whereas now, with how readily and easily information is shared, the second one person gets their hands on those lab notes and digitizes them, it's like that commercial of the ugly picture of what was the cheerleader, and it got put on the poster board at the school, and every time she took it down, another one appeared. It's like whenever something goes on the internet, it never goes away. Well, once the ingredient list and the recipe for a synthetic hallucinogen goes on the internet, good luck putting that toothpaste back in the tube.
Interesting you say that, because that's precisely what this report says. Continued advances in technology, information, and commerce make it easier for someone to make their own drugs. Exactly what you're saying. Well, it's no different than manufacturing, fabricating a firearm with a 3D printer. You don't have to even understand 3D printers and all the engineering behind making a firearm. It's automatic. You just need to know how to access it. And that's what this is, and that's your point. And once it gets around, here's how you access it, well, then it's a done deal. So maybe it sounds a little far-fetched. You know, even the music industry, for example, how long they've been fighting this situation. And with all the illicit distribution of digital music, it was a huge deal. Seems to be more under control today. And I think that's mainly
because there was always a debate between the artists that felt it was stealing and the artists that didn't see it as any different than hearing your song on the radio.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Like, you had some artists that were like Metallica, Lars Ulrich, the drummer. He was adamantly against Napster, and he hated everything about peer-to-peer sharing because he saw every single download as money being taken from him. Whereas you had other artists that looked at it as, well, you hear my song on the radio and then go buy my album. If you download my song and hear it and like it, you're going to go buy my album.
I would also submit, get your take on this, all these various streaming services, like with the smartphone guys, right? It's pretty cheap. So you don't have to pay a lot of money. You got access to every song ever made. So it's not like you're looking for a way to avoid the cost as it used to be. You know, $2 a song or something. What is it now? You pay $10 a month, get all you want. And I think that's kind of changed it. And so it's legal. It's legitimate. But there's still money being made by all parties involved. And you also, as you know, you're dramatically expanding the market. The second-order thinking that gets overlooked. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
When it comes to metal roof.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Thank God it's Friday. Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Friday. Friday.
Friday. We are back with you in the Element Wealth studio. I think I introduced that song to you when I first started doing the show. Because it's appropriate. It's Friday, baby. Thank God it's Friday. That the theme song from the movie that bore the same name. That was like, what, 78, 79, something like that? You're shaking your head. Which was it? 78. 78. Donna Summer, the star, the big disco queen of the era. The movie, by the way, had zero plot to it. You may read something that says, here's the plot. It's like somebody trying to get into a disco or something. Not much of a plot.
Roger Ebert rated the film 1.5 stars out of 4 and wrote, quote, when you describe it, it sounds like a lot more fun than it is when you see it.
That's right. Quote. I would agree with that. That's a good way to put it.
Siskel also gave it a 1.5 star.
1.5 out of 4.
Called it a, quote, disco movie that's little more than a dismal record promotion. More attention has been paid to the display of records than people, end quote.
Okay, got it. Well, still, though, it was, can't you just veg out and have fun? Watch a movie. It doesn't have to be up to their standards for some deep plot, I guess, So, we've talked before about how China is instigating the protests against the data centers in this country. Brand new report. And I think you picked up on this the other day, if I'm not mistaken. Now it appears that there are bot farms of 200,000 accounts. 200,000. And there are at least 200 owned and operated by China that are manipulating the debate about American AI and energy policy. And I'm looking at, I think I shared this the other day, I'm looking at what is a cartoon. It's an AI-generated cartoon, no shock there. And it's all in English, and it's being published in Chinese media. And every time there's a report of a moratorium or a blocking, they're celebrating it in China. We're playing right into their dang hands. And they're promoting, of course, in China, this cartoon that they're distributing using these 200 accounts in this country. And they're showing the Chinese, look at us, we're fooling those Americans with this propaganda, and it's working. That's what they're telling them. And we have people falling for it right here in our state, as a matter of fact. Now, it's become a very controversial matter, of course, as we approach the midterms, and the president, who is very much pro AI and the data center build out, he knows there's some candidates that are in so-called swing sticky districts where he's giving them a pass. They're Republicans that have come out and said, yeah, I'm essentially siding with China here, and I'm anti the data center build out. The president did say the industry needs a little public relations help. I completely agree with the president on that. To just counter all the misinformation. And he said, if it's a Republican against the data center, that's okay with me. Closer to home, I will share this. The president came out today with a truth on his Truth Social platform about this whole beef stuff and this situation with the tariffs that he lifted on imported beef, ground beef specifically. I'm still not quite clear. I understand how you can just target the lifting of the tariffs to the beef that's used in ground beef. Our friend Mike McCormick from down the hall at Mississippi Farm Bureau was on earlier this week, Monday. He did a great job of explaining their position and the supply chain and how all that works. But so here's what the president said. He's going to fast track some orders, essentially, legal documents is the way the president describes them, to be drawn up to allow farmers and ranchers to be given the right to, in all caps, process their own food. This should move quickly. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And he's going after what Mike McCormick described as the beef cartel, 4 major processors that process the cattle that are sold to them to produce consumable beef products. And there's limited competition. And 2 of those are owned by foreign entities. And so I did ask Mike if this would help. He said it really wouldn't. He said he's cut a deal with JBS. He encouraged me to look them up. I don't think Mike has a problem with me repeating here. He knows whenever I'm communicating with him what I do, and I'm likely, unless he tells me otherwise, I don't think it's a problem. But Rhino, we'll have to look it up. He said he's not really going after them. So more on that after the break. We got Fox News, SuperTalk News coming on next. This is important in Mississippi.
Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday, y'all.
Don't forget, in the next segment, it's Multimedia Journalist with SuperTalk Mississippi News, Caleb Sailors. At 12:05, it's Mississippi State Senator Jeremy England. So, yeah, just talking about this Truth Social post from the president. Look, I think we should ease the restrictions. It should not be the regulatory environment should not be so tight, so demanding, so restrictive that only certain organizations can meet all the requirements and be in the meat processing business. I think that's why we got 4. They made it so difficult to overcome. They're so onerous that only a few. And there's been consolidation. So I'm for easing and weakening those restrictions to make it easier to establish new processing plants. I'm not convinced, however, that the farmers, the cattle farmers, and if I'm wrong, please let me know, any cattle farmers out there that are interested in making the massive investment or even have the ability to do so and taking the risk to enter the processing business. My gut feel is they'd rather just raise cows and sell those to processors at a fair price and produce a profit from that business, from that endeavor. I'm not real convinced that they're interested in adding a line of business, essentially, up the supply chain. It's kind of like, Rhino, a manufacturer that also wants to be in the distribution business. That's why they're distributors, because distributors just are better at distribution. They have the relationship. So manufacturers are happy to sell their finished goods wholesale, so they just focus on making stuff, and then they sell those to a limited number of customers who bring those into their inventory and then sell those to the ultimate retailers of whatever those products are. And there are some situations where there's certainly a direct manufacturer-to-consumer model that is viable and makes sense, and there's no doubt that technology is enabling that. But I'm not convinced, and I'd love to hear from the farmers if there's something, now that we have weakened these restrictions and the regulatory environment is not as onerous and not as difficult to satisfy, I'm going to go build a processing facility. And maybe it's several that band together to do so. It's kind of like what our catfish farmers did, certainly when the industry was getting started, because they needed processors upstream to to take the finished fish product they were producing to market into the various end-user products they produce. So we'll see if that has any impact. I'm curious as to whether or not it will. On the C Spire text line, we got a message from Ben from Madison back at home here. It's a good question. Any chance we can get a long-term outlook on the state budget with the tax cuts slated to take place in the coming years while also looking at increases in Medicaid and PERS some point today? Yeah, Ben actually spoke a little bit about that yesterday, and it is a major issue. You know it's going to be a major issue coming up with the elections next year. Folks are aware that we're in the process of eliminating the income tax here in Mississippi over a long-term period of time. We're in the final year of the tax cut that went into effect. What was it, Rhino? 22, I think. We're in the final year of that. We have one bracket. That legislation back in 22 got rid of the 4% bracket and then subsequently reduced the 5% bracket down to 4%. And that's where we are right now. We are at 4%. Next year, the legislation passed in 2025, known as HB 1, the bill that is designed to completely eliminate the income tax. It kicks in, automatically reduces that 4% bracket by quarter point increments over 4 years. So 27 through 30 will get down to 3%. And then after that, there are triggers included in the legislation that reduce up to 0.3%, that 3% bracket per year, meaning it would take 10 years, given the maximum amount that under the legislation, the income tax rate of 3% can be reduced in a given year. So 0.3% increments over 10 years will take us from 3 to 0. And that's we're about to embark upon that next 14-year period of time. So the question is a good one, Ben. What does that mean to revenues to the general fund of the state? And how does it deal with that when you've got the demands of Medicaid? As you know, the Medicaid program in the state of Mississippi asked for a significant increase last year, didn't get it. But they're going to be back at the table asking for it again. It would not be surprising that when we get back into session and we get to the appropriations period toward the end, and the agencies are presenting their budgets, that Medicaid doesn't show up, say, yep, we had a deficit again. You got to fund that before you fund next year. So what happened last year is $50 million. It wouldn't shock me. And by the way, this is not unique to Mississippi. This is happening all across the country. And it's not just a function of improper spending in the Medicaid program, which nationwide is the program that has the most. It's estimated to be about $80 billion at the federal level of the $620 billion that the program invests, if you could call it that, in Medicaid on an annual basis from the federal perspective. And then the state governments match that up with another $450 billion. In Mississippi, it's roughly $7 billion we pull down from the Fed for our Medicaid program. The state contributes $1 billion. It's a matching program. And then there's a provider tax that kicks in another $500 million. It's an $8.5 billion program. Guys, our general fund budget's $7.4. So the Medicaid program is bigger than our entire general fund budget. And Mississippi has the highest federal match at 78% because it's based on per capita income, and we have the lowest per capita income in the nation. Thus, we get the biggest federal match. But to your point, Ben, just a little background there. The theory is eliminating the income tax is going to drive economic growth, and economic growth is going to produce more of the other category of revenue, the major category of revenue that the general fund relies on, and that's sales taxes. So the theory is eliminate the income tax, our economy grows, that translates into more consumption, that equals more sales tax revenue. So, Ben, it's common a common approach for economists to project tax revenue is to calculate tax revenue as a percentage of GDP. So I give you a great example here, and Brian, you and I have talked about this. 2017 tax cuts enacted by the president, where the Democrats say, oh, the deficits that ensued were because of the tax cuts. But the reality is tax revenues increased after the tax cuts. The problem is only by 30%. No, the spending went up 50 over a 7-8 year period of time. So tax revenues went up, Democrats, not down. And Art Laffer, who famously created this thing called the Laffer curve, basically says there's a point on that curve at which the tax rate is optimized, meaning produces the greatest amount of economic growth and the most taxes. Too high, then you blunt economic growth, you get less taxes. Too low, you may have a thriving economy, but you don't get enough taxes. So there's an optimum point on that curve, something he came up with back either in the late 70s or the early 80s when he worked for Ronald Reagan, I think. So that would have been in the 80s. I can't remember if he did that in his academic world, Rhino, before or after he went to work for Reagan. But the guy's still around. He's like 82 years old, and he's still brilliant, by the way. And he invented this. But here's the thing, Ben. I went and researched this not too long ago. It turns out that at the federal level, our tax revenue, our income tax revenue, that's federal, that's personal and corporate, it has been level at 17% of GDP going back 50 years. It doesn't matter if it's Reagan's tax environment, Clinton's, George Bush's, his elder, his dad, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, 17%. Here's where I'm going. We're going to have to increase our GDP in the state of Mississippi by about $130 billion to generate sufficient sales taxes to make up for the loss of income taxes. I'll explain what that means after we talk to Caleb Sailors next.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. There behind the glass stands a real blade of grass. Be careful as you pass. Move along, move along. Come inside, the show's about to start. Guaranteed to blow your head apart.
All right, we got it going on. Welcome back, as the song says. And now it's our pleasure to welcome Caleb Sailors, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News. All right, Caleb, we were just talking about this situation with the beef tariffs. The president, of course, announced about this time last week he was going to lift those to try to import more beef, drive the price down for consumers. But man, the cattle farmers in the great state of Mississippi, none too happy with the president, and across the country, as a matter of fact.
No, not at all. I think it's hard to find unanimous consensus really anywhere, except like when you look at voting blocks and when you look at elections, you won't really see consensus everywhere, except like with the farmers. Like the president had upwards of 80% approval ratings with the farmers in farm majority counties in the United States this past election cycle in 2024. And now that trend has completely reversed with his move to import 300,000 metric tons of beef products into the U.S., tariff-free or free of certain tariffs. And now the Mississippi Farm Bureau President Mike McCormick came on the show and was very vocal in saying that he did not support this decision and he was not for it at all. And even some of our local leaders, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, without bashing the president, said that she supports local cattle farmers, that basically that importing beef is not going to solve our problem. State Senator Andy Berry came on Richard Cross's show to talk about the same thing, saying, hey, the president has tried to do this in the past, and he was kind of talked off the ledge by Brooke Rollins and Cindy Hyde-Smith, but now he's followed through with this, but this is only going to make things worse for cattle farmers here in Mississippi. So One thing that kind of stood out to me, though, listening to Mike McCormick talk about this, is it kind of felt like I was in the old Wendy's commercial. Where's the beef, right? Because that's what he was saying. He's like, the president can announce that 300,000 metric tons of beef are going to be imported to the U.S., and the only problem that's being solved right now is that the futures markets are tanking. So that's not a problem being solved. It's a problem being created for cattle farmers, according to McCormick.
Who are finally making a little money, by the way.
Yes. Because you look at the ag industry right now, cattle farmers are actually the only ones making money.
The row crop farmers are hurting.
They're getting killed.
Yeah.
And cattle farmers are kind of like the exception right now, and then now we're back to square one.
Yeah.
So... But he's saying, where are these 300,000 metric tons of beef? You can announce that you're bringing them here, but where are you getting them from? And then there's issues with bringing in beef from Argentina, where even in China, a country that, can be lax with regulations at times, has had to reject Argentinian beef this year.
Yeah.
Because there were antibiotics that cause harm to humans.
Mike McCormick pointed that out.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the U.S. in recent years has even had to turn away beef from Argentina and a lot of these other countries.
Unsafe, inferior quality.
And there
Mike made that point.
And there are some that leaders, cattle farmers, and even politicians in the U.S., Republicans who are in the same party as the president, who believe that he might be doing a favor to Milei, the president of Argentina, who is a Trump fan. They're friends with each other, and at the expense of local cattle farmers. So I know the president made his new announcement today that he's going to try to allow cattle farmers to process their own beef, and they're even looking at getting rid of some red tape about selling across state lines and some of these other regulations. I know Brooke Rollins has come out and talked more at length about that. I don't know if that's going to pacify the cattle farmers.
Well, in my brief conversation via text with Mike McCormick, he said it wouldn't.
Yeah.
By the way, I just don't see farmers rushing out to stand up beef processing plants.
And I know Mike McCormick talked about this. I had gotten the chance to talk to him off air as well, and the cattle farmers feel like they got a sucker punch from the president. They say, look, we've been your biggest supporters the entire time. We have voted for you. I mean, look at Mississippi, for example. Mississippi has voted for Donald Trump 3 straight election cycles, in large part because of our ag industry, because of our farmers. And now they're saying, we've been with you the whole time. Why are you going against us now?
And Mike McCormick made that point. We should point out that he said, hey, look, I voted for the president all 3 times.
Yes.
And I supported him, but he's got this one wrong, essentially. So.
And it looks like ag leaders are saying the same thing as well. I mean, again, U.S. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, there is no bigger proponent of President Donald Trump in the Senate than her, arguably.
Right.
And she's even like, look,
Yeah.
He's not listening to me on this.
Yeah, and Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins shared the same, as you know. How about Commissioner Andy Gibson? Has he made any comments? I haven't seen anything from him.
He has been mum on this.
Mum on it.
He has been mum on this. Well,
he's in the middle of a campaign. Don't want to cross the president here.
Well, and I think that's why Senator Hyde-Smith also was not as strongly worded as she could have been with her announcement, because, again, she's up for re-election this year and doesn't want to get bashed by the president for going against him at this point. And so it's a really weird juxtaposition a lot of these people have been put in right now. But, you do have some, like McCormick, who have come out and said, look, no, this is wrong on our end, and we don't support this at all.
Yeah, and so we'll see where this goes at this point. But best I can tell, I think the president maybe had a little bit of second thought and comes out and says, hey, look, we only got 4 meat processors. Yeah. Let's make it easier to establish.
Let's break up the monopoly.
I support that regard. That should have already happened in my view. So the government shouldn't be so restrictive in that
And the cattle farmers are saying, look, give us a seat at the table. We'll tell you what our challenges are. We'll tell you where the solutions lie. Don't create problems out of thin air for us. Help us grow our herds. Yeah. That's where our problem is. We have record low herd numbers right now. Help us grow our herds. Then we can find a solution.
Well, that is one thing that Commissioner Gibson said is tax credits for heifers. But I don't know if he was talking about state tax credits or any specifics, right? Any details, or federal tax credits. Mike did say, that would help, but all we're really doing is taking money out of the Treasury and giving it to the farm. I don't think they really want that.
Right.
But I don't know. Got to come up a different plan. Commissioner Sean Tindall of the Department of Public Safety, He, of course, announced officially last Wednesday that he is a candidate for Attorney General of the great state of Mississippi. He has now announced that he plans to step down from his post.
Yeah, I think he learned pretty quickly that it's hard to do double duty right now running. I mean, because, you think about the DPS commissioner, a lot of people think just highway patrol, right?
Yeah.
No, you're over the highway patrol, the MBI, Melota, the Law Enforcement Training Academy. You're over the crime lab, the Bureau of Narcotics. You're over Capitol Police now here in Jackson. Right. I mean, the DPS is a very, very, very large government agency in Mississippi, and you're overseeing a lot. And he said, I took some PTO last week to start the campaign to launch that. He said, now I'm back at the office this week in what's more of a normal week for me. But wow. Okay. I can't do this long term. So Commissioner Tyndall, who was appointed DPS commissioner in 2020 by Governor Tate Reeves, has now said that he's working with the governor on an exit strategy, planning on when he said by the end of the year is probably when he will step down. So we'll see an announcement probably around November, December-ish is what I'm speculating, that he'll step away. And this will give the governor some time to kind of restructure.
Think about it.
Because, the governor has the appointment power there. That's obviously, you know that, Gerard, but for our listening audience, that is, in Mississippi, the governor has certain powers and doesn't have certain powers, right? Where the legislature and lieutenant governor have a lot of power over bills and whatnot. The governor has appointment power, which is one of the biggest ones. And so he'll have to decide, okay, who am I going to appoint to take over the DPS? Is it going to be in the interim, or am I going to make this a full-time appointment? But we're going to be electing a new governor next year, and that governor could appoint a new person too. So
at their pleasure.
Right. Yeah. And so they're having to kind of restructure right now, and Tyndall's having to work with his team at DPS over all these other various subdivision within the agency.
We got two quick stories on high school football. It is back. We got the scoreboard show that's up and running again. And then you shared that a game was canceled after a shooting.
Yeah, a player by the name of Cameron Price, 16-year-old, was shot and killed last week at a Humphreys County high school jamboree. And right after the game, was heading home and was shot, and police don't believe he was the intended target of the shooting. Now, 2 arrests have been made. Jeronsky Watson and Jaden Holmes have both been arrested in connection with this case. But yes, so Humphreys County and Yazoo City were supposed to play each other tonight in Belzona at Humphreys County, and now the school district has said, no, we're going to take time to mourn the loss of one of our student athletes. He was a tight end and defensive end there. We're going to take some time. It's not appropriate to play this game this week. This is too fresh, and so it's not going to count against either team, too, in their pursuit of the playoff. Yazoo City's a 4A school. Humphreys County's a 3A school. So it won't hurt them either way, so they can get away with not playing the game and it not going against their playoff hopes. But still, the bigger story here, though, is that a 16-year-old was shot and killed after a football game.
Tragic.
I mean, it's horrible.
All right, real quick, the scoreboard show. Tell folks about that.
Yeah, we will be back tonight. We started last week, soft launch last week, and we're back tonight with MAIS and MHSAA action. A lot of big games tonight, so tune in, 10 o'clock.
Got it. All right, Caleb Sailors, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News, has been our guest. Appreciate you coming in, Caleb, as always.
Thank you, Gerard.
Yeah, man, have a great show tonight. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. Once we tick past the top of the hour at 12:05, it's State Senator Jeremy England.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Let's go.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth Studio, 601-879-4395. That would be the C Spire text line. It is, of course, wide open. Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. The markets have turned negative because of Fed Chairman Kevin Warsh's comments indicating that, not so fast on these interest rates. We haven't got inflation to where we want it. And so yesterday, the probability of an interest rate hike in September was 39% after his remarks from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, their annual meeting out there. Now, 59% probability of a hike. So it increased by 20% overnight. And that has got investors concerned. He basically says we have not slain the beast that is inflation yet. We are not to our 2% target. Thus, he certainly hinted, he didn't come out and say it explicitly, but he hinted at higher interest rates. The housing market is in the dumps, as you probably know right now. Lots of reports about that. No movement. People are squatting because they got low interest rates. They can't afford to move. Because if they did, they'd have to acquire a new property at a significantly higher interest rate. And that just precludes them from shifting out of their existing home, and that causes problems overall for the housing market because you just have a lack of inventory. And, of course, Rhino, when you got that situation, home builders, their business is way down as a result. They don't want to go out and build homes because they need to sell them. And when folks can't afford them, that's a problem. So, and I know people look at the current mortgage rate, 6.5% or so, and say, gee, that's not really too terribly out of line, and certainly historically. The problem is the cost of houses, the building of a house, and, of course, inflation that has affected home prices. So it's the double whammy of, we're coming out of a period of certainly lower interest rates, but you combine that with the higher cost of a house, and you end up with a mortgage that's unaffordable. And insurance, you can't overlook that. That's gone up quite a bit as well for various reasons. So, man, the vice president ripped Senate candidate Abdul El Said. He a candidate in Michigan. He is a self-avowed Democrat socialist. He claimed that it's white supremacy to reject Islamic Sharia law. That's white supremacy. In other words, you, sir, are a racist, is what you are. He said that criticisms of Sharia law were rooted in white supremacy. That's not my grandpa's Democratic Party, my friend. What? So, I think this guy's missing the whole point here. I can't tell you that
This is what happens when midwits start having to regurgitate talking points that they never had any chance of fully comprehending.
I would agree with that.
They're just reaching out and grabbing buzzwords and catchphrases out of thin air and throwing them together. Right. But because they're the correct buzzwords and catchphrases, the little train clapping seals just clap and applaud and cheer.
You're so right.
Because there's not a functioning brain cell between any of their ears.
And let me just first say that we only recognize laws that were duly enacted in this country. We don't recognize any other countries or religions or ideologies or nutcase laws. We only have one set, and that applies to all of us. The second thing is, that's the problem, is that it's religion conflated with law. It's an ideology conflated with law. It's not objective in that respect. Well, and I don't have this committed to memory, Rhino, but aren't there crazy things that are permitted, allowed, and just part of the Islamic Sharia, specifically ideology, that are not only against our laws, but they're horrific and they're inhumane. The stoning of a person for certain infractions and violations and crime under their law commissions. Well, we don't allow cruel and unusual punishment. Pretty sure that fits that definition as an example. So you're not going to stone somebody in this country. And if you do, your ass needs to go to jail.
But in Islamic countries, the stoning is the prescribed punishment if a woman dares to speak to a man that is not her arranged husband.
Well, that obviously...
Or dares to leave the house without a male chaperone from her male family members.
So those are two blatant, glaring violations of basic human rights right there. What really aggravates me is that pompous UN always classifies us as violating human rights. Never those people and what they do. It's okay to stone women, right? What are some of the other crazy things like rape? Can't that get you? Do you get blamed if you're a victim of rape?
The female is always the one to blame.
And then is pedophilia allowed? There's some form aspect of it, I think. Well,
Muhammad married a child.
Right. That's cruel. That's beyond. It's barbaric. It's totally inhuman. So are you a white supremacist because you oppose stoning of women?
According to midwits and idiots.
Unbelievable. Well, you're right. It's just, if I just throw white supremacy out there, I'll get people to vote for me, right? That's how crazy and upside down it is. Man, oh man. Speaking of something else that's crazy.
You would not be a member of the Democrat Party and you would not vote for Democrat politicians if you applied even a single ounce of logic to the nonsense that comes out of their mouths.
So here's one that's...
Protect women's rights, but also we can't be mean to the Muslims, even though they will literally kill me for saying that I need to protect women's rights.
Well, what about gay people? How do they do in that society?
We need gay marriage, but don't talk bad about the guy that wants to take the gay guy up on the roof and throw him off.
Exactly. So many conflicts. So just
Welcome to the stupidity of the modern left.
Speaking of one, there's a Los Angeles City Councilwoman. She's also a candidate for mayor of Los Angeles, a Democrat, of course. So she's holding this press conference. I'm not kidding you. The Los Feliz Neighborhood Council. It turns out they alerted her office, that's within the ward she represents, that they needed a new crosswalk within the district at Sunset Drive and Bate Street. So it was just completed. She's celebrating that they got it done in 8 months. It took them 8 months to build a crosswalk that's about 30 feet. I'm looking at it. She's celebrating it. Aren't they good? They did it in 8 months. How disconnected are these people from reality? 8 months. It should take about 2 minutes to do something like that. And she's boasting about it. Another example of a delusional and just dumb Democrat, Senator Elisa, or I think she pronounces it Alyssa Slotkin. She wants term limits for Supreme Court justices at 8 years and institute an age limit of 75 across the bench. She says a lifetime appointment is a relic of a bygone era in our country. My plan would create a system where there are vacancies for each president to fill instead of these justices gaming it to benefit their political party. Pot me kettle. You're just pissed because you don't have a Supreme Court that will sign off on, promote, and rule in favor of your agenda. And the last I checked, this court was not designed to support, to be an extension of any political party or ideology. But they don't want that. They want it to be an extension of the Democrat Party. And they'll do anything to get that done.
And notice she never called for that when RBG was still on the bench.
That's true. We are coming right back in the Element Well studio. Final segment of Hour 2 after the break at the top of the hour. It's Senator Jeremy England.
Poly up a miss.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Woo!
Now, when I was a young boy, at the age of 5, my mother said I was going to be.
I want to kind of close the loop on Ben from Madison's question earlier about the scheduled elimination of the state income tax in the state and just the ramifications that would have on the state's budget, along with what is likely to be a request for an increase in the Medicaid budget. And the problem there, as you know, is if you don't satisfy that request, you're at risk of not meeting your obligation to receive the federal money. It's just a big problem. It's a big dang mess, and I see that program continuing to grow. And then you also, Ben, asked about the PERS program as well, and you're absolutely right. That's the other big kind of spending sword of Damocles, if you will, that's hanging out over us. But to replace the income tax with sales taxes based on growing the economy. So the only way we're going to get more sales taxes is if we go spend more money, right? So we're not going to see an increase in sales taxes. I don't think that the state is even thinking about that. That wouldn't be very politically popular. So if we're going to replace income taxes with sales taxes, that means we got to go spend a bunch more money. And again, using the standard approach economists do to project how economic growth would affect income taxes, you have to look or any tax revenues, honestly. You have to look historically at what those revenues are as a percentage of GDP. Mississippi has a GDP of about $165 billion annually. We would have to increase our GDP by $133 billion. $133 billion, that's 79%, to offset the total loss of income tax revenue with sales taxes. That is a tall order. That means you guys better get out there and spend a bunch of money, like increase your spending by 80% on stuff that's subject to sales taxes. And that's a lot. So I think that's going to be difficult. The PERS situation, Commissioner Andy Gibson, running for governor, has suggested just sending $200 million a year out of the general fund, out of revenue that comes into the general fund, to the PERS program. That's not a new idea. That's been around a while. Actuaries have suggested that. Our state treasurer, David McRae, he suggested it. Need to do it over about 20 years just to get to a more comfortable funding level to ensure benefits are there for those that retire in the future. That's a big chunk, $200 million a year. So you combine that with the loss of income tax revenue, and then the other thing that has been proposed by him is to cut car tax, which I'd love to see happen, by 50%. That would cost about $350 million because his proposal is to increase the legislative tag credit. That, in other words, spend more state money to cut taxes at the local level. So between those two, that's $550 million a year. And there's some other reforms that have been proposed as well, at least by him at this point. I haven't seen any of the other candidates do that. And then you combine that with the loss of income tax revenue, Ben, I figured we're looking at $1 billion deficit in the future. Obviously, we're not going to do that. we are bound by law to balance our budget. So I'd like to see some pro formas, some forecasts, some projections that are recast budgets for the state of Mississippi reflecting these reforms. Loss of income tax revenue plus significantly higher spending. Now, I know that what has been proposed is we'll just get rid of the special projects bill at the end of the year, that where whatever's kind of left over after the budget, the legislature doles out to local governments for various projects, and you could get rid of that, no doubt, and that would amount to a couple $100 million a year on average. But they only do that after they do the budgets. There's money left over based on projected revenue. But then what would happen is the school districts, the county, or mainly the counties and the cities that get these special project monies, also known as the Christmas tree bill, well, they would just figure out another way to get that money, like raising your taxes locally. So we're just playing shell games is what I feel like, just shifting stuff around. And I don't think that's really in the best interest. Save tab? Dan in Tate County, is that what you mean? Check you may have a typo there, Dan. Save tab money by not paying for PERS with our taxes. How are we going to pay for PERS if we don't do it with general fund revenues, Dan, which, of course, are produced by sales taxes and income taxes? Save tax money by not – okay. Well, then if we defaulted – that's the problem, Dan. If we defaulted on the benefits owed to the PERS beneficiaries, the PERS retirees, they would drag us into court and we'd likely lose. No, I think we would lose. You got to understand, politicians are all about trying to appease the couple 100,000, 300,000 members of PERS to get them to vote for them. I'm going to fix everything, right? Forget about the fact that it's going to fall on the shoulders of taxpayers. Fox News, SuperTalk News next, then Senator Jeremy England.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 3 of Middays. We are live from the Element Wealth studio on this
Friday, y'all.
We are pleased to welcome now Senator Jeremy England. He represents District 1, serves as the chair of the Senate Elections Committee, vice chair, Ports and Marine Resources. Senator, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Gerard. It's casual Friday, so
absolutely
glad to be here. Glad we made it to the end of the week.
I see you got your Mississippi State maroon Mississippi State Senate logoed shirt on there, your polo, huh?
That's right, Maroon Friday. I got to represent.
All right, I got my Journey T-shirt on today, so as you can see.
Right.
All right.
There's some Ole Miss colors in there, I'm sure.
Exactly. All right. Well, we wanted to have you on to get an update from, of course, your district, kind of what's going on, and get your take on these the redistricting tour that's currently occurring across the state. What's the latest on that?
Yes, so that tour has kicked off. So far, the committee has visited Tupelo and then South Haven last night. So that's part of the process, is going out and hearing from the people what they want to see with redistricting. Of course, this is a mid-decade redistricting, so it's a little odd, not completely unprecedented, but a little bit odd. And the reason is because the Supreme Court in the Calais decision, Louisiana v. Calais, said that racial gerrymandering is unconstitutional. And as you know, and your listeners may remember, we redistricted in Mississippi in 2022. We put those maps out and voted on those ahead of the 2023 elections. And then in 2025, a federal court told us that we had to redistrict to include 2 more majority-minority districts in the Senate, 1 more in the House. And now that's unconstitutional because that specifically looked at race. And so we're just going ahead and getting ready with the expectation of the governor calling us back in for a special session so that we can go back and redistrict without looking at those racial lines.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so I believe, and I'm sure you'd probably share that view, that it was wrong to start with, that we're drawing, it seems racist by definition, honestly, that we draw district lines for public office based on racial composition.
Yes, look, I think it was a very old rule. And look, Mississippi, we can't ever forget that we have a pretty tough past when it comes to voting rights and things like that. But I don't think anybody can deny that we have moved very far beyond that. And so now I think it's time for us to stop looking at. But look, we still have other things we have to look at. We have to look at social makeup, at communities of interest. We have to look at many different things when putting populations together in these districts, and everyone gets the right to vote in those districts. And of course, Republicans are in power. I think if Democrats were in power, the lines may be drawn a little different, but that's part of it. And that's part of what the court recognizes, is that you're going to have people looking at incumbents and looking at the party in power and looking at ideology and things like that when these districts are redrawn. And this court case specifically told us to draw them differently than the legislature did in 2022. So of course, we're going to go back and look at that now. That's a legislative decision, and I think this Supreme Court recognizes that, and I agree with them. Yeah.
So are you still expecting the governor to call a special session between now and the regular session next January?
I do think he will, Gerard, and the main reason being is next year is election year. Yeah. We're heading right into our state legislative races next year, and if we're going to redistrict, we need to do that probably before the January 1st qualifying deadline or qualifying opening begins, so that people will know what their districts look like and that our clerks will have time to put those districts together and make sure that they're in place. Otherwise, we're going to have to set back our elections next year. So I think if we can get this done timely, and I think we're leaving that much time on our calendar with these meetings, and if the governor so chooses, he can call us back and we'll be ready to roll with it.
What are you hearing from folks that are attending these sessions where you're talking about redistricting? You got like 7 or 8 planned, right?
That's right. Yeah. So we're going all the way from, anywhere from Gulfport to South Haven, which was last night, in Tupelo down to Natchez. So we're crisscrossing the state and giving people their opportunity to be heard. Some people were hearing that, look, they bring up the past of Mississippi and they say that, they're worried that minority voters are going to lose some voice in this process. And then last night in South Haven, I think there were a lot more voices that said, look, we don't agree with racial gerrymandering. It's time to move past that. We need to look at other things when drawing these districts around communities. And so, we're kind of hearing from both sides on it. Some are saying don't redistrict. Others are saying please do it as quickly as possible. But for those that are saying don't redistrict, Gerard, I think they're forgetting that our current districts were drawn by a court, by a federal court. And so we've already been forced to redraw them once outside of the legislature. So really it's time for the legislature to step back in and now that we have this Calais case, to go back and look at this again.
All right, let's turn our attention to some legislation that you were instrumental in enacting in the state of Mississippi, and that would be the SHIELD Act, and that the intention of that legislation is to ensure the integrity of our voter rolls and our elections in general. First, tell the folks exactly what the SHIELD Act does, remind us of that, and tell us what the status of that legislation is.
Yes, absolutely. So the SHIELD Act is designed to make sure that we don't have any non-citizen voters on our voter rolls here in Mississippi. And I'll be clear, I don't think there's many at this time. But as you and I have discussed before, and I've discussed with a lot of people, if you ever have an instance where one non-citizen voter is caught voting in our elections, the integrity of the entire election system and the way that people look at that system and have confidence in that system goes down, which we can't really afford to happen with our election system. So the SHIELD Act requires the Secretary of State's office to run our SIMS database, which is the State Electronic Management System. It's basically our voter rolls, Gerard. Those names have to be run through the SAVE database, which is not to be confused with the SAVE Act going on in Washington right now. That database is the Systematic Aliens Verification for Entitlement Program. So it's the best available database for us to check our Mississippi voter rolls through those citizenship database to make sure that we've only got citizens voting here in Mississippi. The Secretary of State's office has to do that annually and then report back to the legislature on what they found, how many people were taken off the rolls, and that kind of thing, so that we can monitor this going forward. Now, what people have been confused about on this system is they say, well, do I need to bring my birth certificate with me to vote now, or do I need my marriage license if I'm a woman? And the answer is no. Most Mississippi voters are not going to even know the SHIELD Act was passed, because you still register to vote the same way and you still go to vote the same way you did. You do have to have your voter ID, because we have that here in Mississippi, but you don't need anything else. The only time you would need those citizenship verifying documents is if you're flagged through the SAVE database. Then we built in a time frame for you to go to your clerk's office and prove your citizenship if you are a U.S. citizen.
And so, additionally, and maybe you said it, I just didn't catch it, but when you register to vote, your application is also processed against the SAVE database to ensure before we even add you to the rolls that you are determined to be a citizen, right?
It is if you get a license or an ID card through the DPS. Okay. If you check that you're not a citizen, or if you don't check that box, we automatically run that through. Now, everybody is run through annually, but at the time of registration, those are the people that are run, and we've already done that for several years. So this isn't really anything new as far as that process goes. We did add that if you don't check a box, that you have to get run through the SAVE database. But again, I don't expect there to be many people on there that we find out that we have many non-citizen voters in Mississippi. But we want Mississippi voters to be confident that we're checking into that, and that we're using every system available to make sure that our voter rolls have Mississippi voters on them.
It's a precaution, I think, as much as anything, and I agree with you. It's just a process, a policy to build confidence. I think you're right. I doubt we have hardly any, if any, on our voter rolls in Mississippi. If I'm not mistaken, Senator, they did the same thing in Alabama and found like 10 in the whole state of Alabama, something to that effect, which isn't surprising in our states. But when you get into some of these other states where they're a lot more generous with just signing up people with the automatic voter registration for almost any state interaction without any check of citizenship, as you know, you end up with a bunch of illegals signed up. We don't know if they're voting or not, but it puts the risk out there. We got a break. If you can hang on, we can kind of talk about what you're looking at in the next session. You good to go?
Absolutely, I can hang for sure.
All right, we got Senator Jeremy England on the line with us. We are in the Element Wealth studio, coming right back on Middays.
Family Termite is a...
Attention, adoring fans! It's time for...
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. We're visiting with Senator Jeremy England, represents District 51 from the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast. All right, Senator, we're just about 3-4 months away from you guys gathering back up officially underneath the dome, final session of this term. And, of course, elections are slated for 2027, all the statewide offices as well as all of our legislators. What is on your radar? What are you going to be working on in the next session?
Yeah, so from the Elections Committee, Gerard, I think it'll be a quiet session, mainly because we don't want to spring anything on our great circuit clerks and our elections commissioners, on a big election year like we have. I'm kind of looking at a few things to maybe help us get more poll workers, because that's extremely important. And those of us that go vote on the day of elections know that a lot of times we have retired people. They're getting older. We need a younger influx of people working in the polls. So I'm trying to look at ways that we can maybe, get people focused on that and maybe trying to do that. But some other things I'm going to be looking at, Gerard, and this is stuff that just came about, and it's kind of, social media has allowed this to happen. Anytime we have a tragedy or an event that happens in a community, you have a lot of these internet detectives or sleuths that are jumping and getting involved and starting to put people's information out there that they think may be involved with a crime or maybe accused of having done something. So I think Mississippi needs to look at some anti-doxing legislation. Of course, doxing is when you go find somebody's address or a picture of their home and you put it out there with the intent of someone being harassed or harmed with that information. I think we need to look at that, at strengthening those laws. That's something I'll be looking at. I talked with a law enforcement officer recently that told me that firing into an occupied vehicle may not be classified as a violent crime in certain circumstances. And so that's something I want to see brought about. I think we just saw down here a shooting that happened into a vehicle that led to injuries. So I want that to be looked at. But those are the kind of things that are kind of on my radar for now. But as you know, as we get into a legislative session, we never know what the big issue is going to be that turns up or that's going to draw a lot of our attention. And even though it's an election year, just like the speaker said, Speaker Jason White, look, and I think he's right. He said, look, we don't shy away from things. We don't do that. I don't expect Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann to do so either. So we're going to be taking on issues and moving forward with them, even though we're facing an election year. I hope it turns out well for us.
Okay, got you. Yeah. So I assume then you intend to run for re-election, right, for your current office?
Yes. I'm going to run for Senate again. It's been a great honor to represent the people of District 51. They've allowed me that honor. My family is still behind me, still okay with me doing that. Matter of fact, my wife tells me the house runs better when I'm in session because she takes care of things a little better around here when I'm out. But yeah, having their support and having my community support, and I love doing this job. So I will be running for re-election for state Senate next year.
All right. So one thing I failed to ask you when we were talking about the SHIELD Act, the election integrity legislation that you introduced and navigated through the process into law, is it not true that a federal judge has blocked use of the federal SAVE database? So that's kind of throwing a wrench in this process, right?
Yeah, so that was a judge out of the Southern District of D.C. or out of the D.C. district. I'm not sure which court exactly, but what her ruling is, she said that the Trump administration could not require the Social Security Department to share information, and the Department of Homeland Security and all to share information with that database, because what they were trying to do was build up the database to have it be as populated as we could get it. So it doesn't bar us from using it, but it definitely makes it less effective. And look, Gerard, every elections expert that I've talked to on this topic, whether they be from the right or the left as far as ideology goes, they agree that this is the best database we have for checking citizenship. So I hope that gets appealed and goes away, because the better we can make that database, the better the SHIELD Act and this other states that do similar checks will be.
Okay. Well, that could affect the SAVE Act as well, right? I mean, because the judge is saying you just can't use it for any of that.
That's right. Yeah. And look, it was we get too much of where these activist judges, I think, try to get involved in these things. And I read the opinion. It's like a 76-page opinion.
Good gosh.
It was pretty snarky. I don't know if you had a chance to read it. It was very snarky towards the Trump administration. And look, I understand the Trump administration is snarky right back. So I guess that's kind of where we are. But as an attorney reading an opinion that has that entered into it, I wasn't really happy with it. But I think it's something that will be appealed. This is information that is out there publicly that they can check this database. And I don't know why anybody would be against having a database that you could verify U.S. citizenship through, especially for the purposes of having for our voter rolls and for our elections.
Yeah, pretty important, obviously, that only valid, credentialed American citizens who are authenticated as such are allowed to vote. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, and I agree. I don't even know why we have to debate that in this country, but sure does seem like we do. Okay, so we'll see where that leads us at this point. Is there anything on the ports and marine resources side that you've got to take a look at for the next session?
Yeah, so we're always looking at our oyster crop down here, right? After Hurricane Katrina and the oil spill, we lost that almost just completely went away. So we're looking at that resource and building it back up. There's been some court decisions that we're going to have to look at there, but we're trying to make sure that those oyster beds are replenished, that they're available, and that we're turning out a good crop of oysters for food product.
Okay.
We also in the past have been working on labeling of seafood in our local restaurants to make sure that if someone's telling you they're serving domestic or Gulf seafood, that they are doing that. So we require labeling now for domestic or imported seafood. That's for the consumer to know when they come in what they're getting. We also are always, and this is more of a federal thing, but the Department of Marine Resources does a great job at looking at our snapper output, and I think they just released that we're going to have another small season open up for snapper, maybe over Labor Day weekend because of the quotas that came in. So that's good for people who want to get out and do that. I wish it was more. I talk to people who snapper fish all the time, and it's so limited, and the season is so short. And another thing, of course, we did this past year, Gerard, was we require the Department of Marine Resources law enforcement officers to have probable cause before they can pull over and board and search a vessel. That wasn't in our laws before. We saw other states kind of doing that. And I think the DMR worked well with us to try to implement that. Because, what they were doing was just kind of stopping anyone and everyone to check safety equipment and to do all of that. And if you had a fishing pole, they were checking all of these things. And I heard from so many people that said, look, we're getting stopped 3 or 4 times every time we go out. So we were trying to address that, allow people, more freedom to get out and enjoy the waters, and require probable cause before these officers can pull them over. And I've heard good things about that so far. I think we've seen that trend. And look, that's a testament to how good the law enforcement officers are with the Department of Marine Resources. They just kind of flowed right along with this law that we passed with them and implemented it, and we're moving along now.
Yeah, just saw Joe Spraggins last week when I was down on the coast, as a matter of fact, so runs that. So, Senator, what are you hearing from your constituents? What are they saying that they'd like for you to address and work on?
So, Gerard, there's you could almost pick an issue du jour, right, whenever it comes up. Last week or the week before, it was this firearm suppressor law that we passed a bill in the Senate that would have allowed us to not have to fill out these ATF forms to get a firearm suppressor. And look, we have a lot of gun enthusiasts. We have a lot of hunters in this state, and they love to have that suppressor on the end of their rifles when they go shoot. Whenever they are hunting, they don't have that the loudness of the guns, and it's very important for like our veterans. Our veterans come back from overseas and they want to use weapons. Well, there were some other states that entered into a lawsuit or that were part of a lawsuit that they no longer have to go through and do that ATF form. Mississippi still does. Because we couldn't pass the Senate passed the bill last year that would have allowed it. It died in the House without a vote. But I expect that to come back up because that's important. Okay. But again, that was just one issue. One issue that was going on. I'll tell you another one real quick, Gerard, that I know we'll address is the absences for schools. We're hearing a lot of people say, "Look, we've made that too tight now." You can only miss 3 or 5 or so many days. So we're going to revisit that. A lot of times we pass laws and see how they go and have to come back and revisit them. That one will certainly be one we revisit and talk to our teachers about. But a lot of different things out there, and I think it's going to be a great 2027 session. I'm honestly ready to get back and get rolling with it.
We look forward to it. Senator Jeremy England, representing Mississippi Senate District 51, chair of the Elections Committee, has been our guest. Appreciate it, Senator. Thanks a lot for coming on.
Yep, thanks, Gerard. We're almost at football season. So
absolutely.
Let's keep trucking.
We got half an hour of middays from the Element Wealth Studios remaining. Stay with us.
From the And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, onto the real part.
Dynamite! On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Another night slowly closes in, and I feel so lonely. Touching heat, freezing on my skin. I pretend you still own me. I'm going crazy, I'm losing sleep. I'm in G5, I've been way too deep over you. I can't believe you're gone. You were the first, you'll be the last.
That's from the all-hit request line, a little Cheap Trick. The Flame on this Friday. Appreciate that, Rhino. So we are back with you in the Element Wealth studio. What about Lake America? Looks like the president signed an executive order yesterday to rename the lake formerly known as Lake Ontario. He's mad at the Canadians. We got a little rift going on there between this country and Canada with respect to trade. There are a lot of people in this country that are concerned about how that would affect the price of the goods that come from Canada into this country. Ford Motor Company is really getting ripped by this. And, in fact, the Wall Street Journal actually had an article, the editorial board, feeling like that the president kind of gave Ford the finger here. And that's because a lot of the parts used in the manufacturing process are made in Canada, imported into this country. Some finished good vehicles as well. I know also components used in the production of farm equipment also comes from Canada. So this country and Canada just at odds over trade policy, and I hope that gets worked out because it does, certainly in the short term, it imposes some economic hardship. And I think the president is looking to kind of maximize the pain on our neighbor to the north by renaming. Now, we looked this up a couple of days ago when it was being discussed when he announced the possibility. Does it mean that anything other than in federal documents, and whenever it is referenced from a federal perspective, that it shall be referenced as Lake America and not Lake Ontario? So, and of course, I'm sure you've seen all the crazy AI-generated memes where Canada is retaliating as well. My gosh, absolutely incredible. So,
I think the funniest that's been going around has been the 2026 version of Freedom Fries, where they're no longer Canadian geese, they're Donald Ducks.
Donald Ducks. Got it. Well, we'll see.
I don't know
what
to tell
leads.
people other than you can use the evolved human trait of pattern recognition. It's not against the rules. It's not against the law. It's not faux pas.
Yeah.
And Trump has a history and a record of whenever he is in these trade negotiations, he pulls a stunt to put his opponents on their heels, making rash decisions
Yeah.
Because they don't have a canned response ready for whatever craziness Trump has thrown their way.
And I'm just going to say it. It's because he's a business person.
It's a negotiation tactic.
And that's what business people do. And he's just a step ahead of politicians who don't.
It just seems like nobody's willing to put two and two together and go, well, he's done this and that and this and that. It's a pattern. Right. How does nobody recognize it at this point?
He's got it in his book.
It's not like it's his first year in office and this is all new to us.
Well, like I said, he wrote the art of the deal. He describes it in his book. It's a pretty good idea for you to go read that when you're negotiating, right? Was it all I can think about is that famous scene in the movie Patton? George C. Scott plays Patton, and he's finding himself in a position of leverage versus his German enemy at the same level, Rommel, General Rommel. I read your damn book. Remember, he said that. He did, too. It's a pretty good idea if you're going to war with somebody, you'd read their book to understand how they think. Business people think like that all the time. I felt like in some cases in a super hotly competitive situation, I felt like I knew more about my competitor's solution than my own.
Now historians point to, I can't remember the guy's name, but there was an American officer that was in charge of tanks in World War I and had a bit of an obsession with tanks in the interwar period that wrote almost prophetically about how another war would start and would implement air warfare and tank warfare in ways that were not deemed possible in World War I. And historians are pointing to the fact that Rommel had that guy's book.
Gotcha. How about that?
All the head German generals had personal copies of his book.
So you're telling me it's just leaders educating themselves, trying to increase the intellect that they can use in negotiations, in this case in war, which is a conflict, much like business negotiations are, except nobody dies, generally speaking, in business negotiations. But there's going to be somebody's going to get the better end of a deal, usually so it works. Now, what you try to hope for is a good deal for everybody. Win-win, as they call it. By the way, on the C-Spire text line, Kevin from Brandon just sent this in. Rankin County School District, Northwest Rankin High, Northwest Rankin Middle, Northwest Rankin Elementary, under controlled movement due to a threat called into Northwest Rankin Middle School. We are working closely with law enforcement to assess the situation and ensure safety. Our top priority is our students and staff. Stay safe, Kevin. Appreciate that. And thanks for letting us know. And hopefully we figure out what's at the bottom of this and get it resolved. But absolutely. And thank you for putting the safety of the students and staff at the top of your list from a priority perspective. It's absolutely where it should be. Man. Hopefully that comes to a quick, uneventful resolution. Let's see. With all the Horizon ExxonMobil money, we should have seafood and oysters running in the streets. What did they do with all that money? I don't really know. I don't remember the disposition of that money and how it got allocated and how much it was. It's been a while. But I hear you. Let's see here. The news break said that the Trump plans, talking about on our air, plans to import more foreign beef. Is he actually importing more foreign beef? That's not actually what he announced, as you know, Rhino. He just said they lifted the quota, so to speak, which meant that more beef could come into the country without being subject to the tariff. And the problem that causes for our farmers is that tariff is used to offset the very low cost and low price the foreign farmers are willing to take from the producers for their cattle, which apparently is inferior and also often unsafe with bacterial infections and so forth, or the presence, I should say, of bacteria that's not good for you. And so that's the big concern. And the idea is that the president said was, okay, they've agreed to sell it for 25% less. It's no secret. He's trying to drive the retail price down to try to mitigate the concerns folks are expressing with respect to the cost of groceries. This just applies to ground beef. And he's trying to just get costs down as we, again, get ready to elect a brand new House and 35 senators on the ballot this coming November. No secret, the cost of living tops the list of concerns of voters, and I think that's what this move is actually all about. Let's see what else we got here on the C Spire text line. Yeah, the issue with the public employees retirement system, I know this comes up every time we talk about it, Rhino. People say, let's just cut the 13th check, let's cut this, cut that, and I guess the concern with that is you start playing around with the benefits, you're likely to find yourself in court. Talking about existing benefits or even those who are currently in the system under the existing tiers. There are presently 5 tiers. We just passed law to create a new tier, Tier 5, last year. But most people working today hired when Tier 4 was created, and that just the tier basically just outlines the terms of the program. It defines the amount that the employee pay in, and it also defines and sets out all the details of how benefits are calculated, the options for benefits. Those details, those terms and conditions comprise a tier. So if you're going to change that with some legislation, amend those provisions, you're likely to get sued and lose, in my view. And that would include cutting out the 13th check, as somebody on our text line suggests. That's just not going to happen. At the end of the day, likely what we're going to see is the taxpayers paying a bunch of money to fully fund PERS. Coming right back.
For a flipping good time.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
It's Friday, I'm free again. I got my motor running for a while week.
That's our customary final segment, bumper song here on Fridays. The great George Jones, Finally Friday. Hope you have a great weekend in store. So on the C Spire text line, they need to figure something out. Tired of the taxpayers subsidizing their retirement. Wish they'd subsidize mine. And that's in response to the discussion we've had this morning about the public employees retirement system. So I understand why you feel that way, but just keep this in mind. You're paying for everything related to the compensation of everybody that works for government. So it's not like you're subsidizing it. It's just part of their compensation package. You're paying their wages. You're paying their Social Security taxes that are levied by both the employee and the employer, effectively, because it comes out of their gross pay. And you're, of course, paying the employer contribution. And the employee comes out of their pay, which you're paying. So that's just part of the agreement between the taxpayers, if you will, and government employees. Same at the federal level. You're paying. So you can't really look at it as subsidizing it. And I know you said, I wish they'd subsidize mine. And I hope this doesn't come out wrong, but you could go work for the government if you like the deal that they got. And there's a lot of people, as you know, somebody told us that on the C Spire text line, that, they said that teachers, I know that teachers go to work for these deals, these programs. Of course, I can't find it now. Oh, yeah, here it is. Against the grain. The 13th check actually was a positive recruiter of teachers from across the state lines that had already retired. Okay, how did they qualify for retirement benefits if they came into here? So I'm not really following it. But there's no doubt, that's from Against the Grain, there's no doubt that that the retirement system, Rhino, is a powerful recruiting tool for public sector workers because generally their pay is below the private sector. So it's like you can go work in the private sector, you got higher gross wages, but the retirement benefits aren't as generous, and the benefits overall may not be. Or you can go work in the public sector where the pay is lower, but the benefits are better. It's just whichever is more suitable to your liking. It's what it's about. And I know people don't like it, that the taxpayers are going to be on the hook for this unfunded liability. And like I said, at least one candidate for governor, Andy Gibson's already said, yep, I'm for $200 million a year coming out of the general fund. He said we just have to prioritize it. This is nothing new. This has been known, talked about, understood for years. Actuaries have told our retirement system, our lawmakers, you guys need to send $200 million a year, or you can increase the contribution rate. Either way, the employer contribution rate, the taxpayers are on the hook. There's no way. But they sure didn't mind paying them the lowest wages in the nation for the last 50 or 60 years. Of course, SuperTalk has pushed this narrative to promote jealousy toward public employees, including teachers. Huh? What? Man, you're just wrong.
That's that same clown that's got a burr under his saddle every day that ends in Y because he thinks he knows everything.
We don't promote squat. What did I say in the last couple of segments where I've talked about this?
If you're not blowing smoke up an educator's skirt, this guy thinks you're the devil.
Can the money be used to shore a person? Sure, it's $18 million a year. You need $200 million a year. I'm sorry to raise my voice, but the math matters here, Rhino. And people won't. I know it looks like, wow, we got this money. It's $18 million a year. The unfunded, it's $189 million total over 10. The unfunded liability is $26 billion with a B, not an M. That does matter. I'm sorry. Please, I apologize for raising my voice there, but, man, we got to start doing the math. It matters. It's important. We got people in the dang Congress that don't know it. We got people in our legislature that couldn't tell you what our budget is. Every deadgum one of them ought to be required to pass a test on that. You saw El Said on the interview with Jesse Waters. Hey, Jesse says, what's the federal budget? The cost of living's too high. He couldn't answer it. How could you run for the United States Senate and not know what the federal budget is? That's unacceptable. You're not qualified. Man. So, man, oh man. Sorry about that. I got to calm down a bit. There's a difference between millions and billions and billions and trillions. I'll just say that. And the same thing applies when you get into the discussion about water usage. That has to be expressed in terms of trillions, and we're bumping a quadrillion. Most people don't even use quadrillion in their language, but we're about to hit the quadrillion gallons a year mark in this country in terms of water usage. We're talking about, they say, wow, the data center uses 3 million gallons a day. We use a quadrillion. Pretty sure that's 15 sets of 3 zeros. Oh, my gosh. Oh, well, I'm going to calm down now. Look, we got to fix the public employees retirement system. There's no doubt. There's been a lot of work done on that. But at the end of the day, I think you're going to find it's going to take money infused into the program one way or another, either by writing checks or increasing the contribution rate. I think that's imminent. We're out of here today. Back with you again on Monday. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.